Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family.
Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, it's time for another It's the Bread story. Every now and then, if you're like me, you have what I call a God moment or a divine appointment. Such was the case for me yesterday. I was sitting at my desk at Bread Beckers trying to tie up many loose ends before Brad and I leave for Greece for 12 days. The business phone doesn't ring in my office, so I do not hear calls coming in. I picked up the phone to actually make a call and realized there was no dial tone. Unbeknownst to me, I had answered an incoming call to Bread Beckers. I said hello, not really knowing what to expect. The caller's name was Marsha Lay, my guest today. After helping her with a question about her order, I told her who I was and that I do not usually answer the phone or handle these questions, so I would have to check on it and have someone call her back. She then said to me how grateful she was for discovering my teaching about freshly milled grains and how she wished she had known this before she had 26 inches of her colon removed. Now she really had my attention. So I had to hear at least some of her story. And right then, I asked if she would be willing to share her story on Sue's Healthy Minutes. And here she is today, the very next day. She didn't share her whole story with me on our phone conversation, so I will hear it right along with you. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, Marsha Lay. Marsha, thank you so much for joining me today and being willing on such short notice to share your story. So let's just begin by you telling a little about yourself and where you're from and just get started sharing your story.
Okay, I'm glad to be here. If it helps just one person avoid my journey, it's worth it. I live in a very small south central Mississippi town now. I've lived here for a year, Stringer, Mississippi. My husband and I lived in Bay Springs for most of our married life after he finished medical school, and he worked in family practice clinic his dad began in Bay Springs, which is about 12 miles north of here. So we moved down here last summer and built a house on our tree farm. And we've been here since then. But my story began, I think, the best I can tell, in elementary school back in the 1960s. And I don't mind telling you, God has allowed me to live 65 years on this earth.
Amen.
This is in the 60s. My stomach hurt a lot. And, you know, back then we just didn't know anything. Most people don't know anything now. And I just continue to learn and found the biggest blessing of my life just in the last month. So I never wanted breakfast, and we grew up in a home where Mama cooked every meal, and we all 8 of us. I had 6 of us children. We sat around the table and ate, and every morning I never wanted anything, and I'd say, "Daddy, my stomach hurts," and he'd pat my stomach and try to help me feel better. It never did, but the petting helped, I guess.
Yeah.
But, I can't recall any specific issues except that I was chronically tired. And my siblings always thought I was so lazy, and I forgive them for that now. We didn't know. I didn't know. But as a result of me not having a lot of energy, it benefited me in that I got to sit around and read books a lot. And Daddy was really sympathetic to me there and kept me supplied in books because he loved to read too. So that was really the only major health issue I had in my childhood was when I was in the 4th grade in 1967, I guess. I had to have my tonsils removed. And after that, no big issues, but I never was truly energetic. I got married in 1977 when my high school sweetheart got accepted to medical school, and he didn't want to go by himself, so we'd go off to Jackson to medical school.
Wow.
And I was in college, too, at the time, and we were both going to school, and then we had some God-planned children that started. They didn't come along according to our plan, but they did to his. So in 1979, after the birth of our first daughter, I went home. Somebody had to stay home and take care of the children. So about a decade later is when my real health issues started. And it started, interestingly, Sue, about the same time you started milling grain and making bread. So it was in 1991 or 1992 that I just suddenly one night had bloody diarrhea, and I'm not talking about blood-tinged diarrhea. I'm talking about almost complete blood.
Wow.
And I wound up in the hospital for about a week. During that time, I had my first colonoscopy. I was in my mid-30s, and they never could find my colonoscopy. Wasn't remarkable for anything. There was no conclusive diagnosis of what caused that, so the GI doctor thought he suspected it could be E. coli. So that was really all the answers we had. And I didn't have another episode. In 1999, all three of our daughters were about finishing up high school or nearly finishing high school, and I thought it was kind of the right time for me to own up to a promise I made myself to finish college. So I went back to school too. And we were all four in college at the same time.
That's a lot of book learning and
it really was.
And studying and homework going on.
Yeah, my poor husband. So I wound up getting my BS and going straight on to law school and getting a law degree. And I worked some, and then I went back to law school and got an LLM at Alabama, and I was teaching at the University of Southern Miss in the College of Business, and I loved that job. But from the time, from 2012, when I really started having some problems with diverticulitis, it would surface about every 2 years. In 2014, it really put me on the couch for about 2 weeks. I couldn't get up and go anywhere. And over the next few years, by 2017, I was having 2 episodes a year. And my GI doctor said, when you're having them twice a year, it's time to talk about surgery, which frightened everything out of me. I didn't want to wind up with a colostomy bag, and I didn't understand that I didn't have to have that route. But he wanted me to talk about surgery. So in 2018, I was supposed to have, in May of 2018, I was supposed to have surgery. And work issues got in the way and prevented me from doing that. But by 2019, I was so sick with it, and they said, this is it. You're not putting this off anymore. So October of 2019, they removed 26 inches of my colon, and thankfully I did not have to have that colostomy bag. It took a solid year for me to recover from that. And I have not worked since then. I've just been enjoying staying at home, so that was a blessing too. But it was just chronic diverticulitis. So typical things they would tell you to do: avoid nuts, avoid seeds. Nothing like that worked. They said stress really brings it on. Well, I don't know anybody that doesn't have stress. What my education background put me through enough of that. But anyway, how I found you, I think it's appropriate now to jump to that.
Yes. How did you find Bread Beckers?
Well, I have 2 daughters that have had asthma and skin issues most of their lives, and both of them are RNs. They've got BS RN degrees, and they are persistent, if not exhaustive, researchers. And the older daughter has a little late in life child that came along, and he had so many allergies. It was just debilitating. I mean, he's allergic to just about everything, and he has skin issues like she did. So she just began researching. It just occurred to her that this ought not to be this way, that God provides in our food nutrition, and why are we not getting what we need? And she began the search, and she's the one that found you. So,
Wow.
and that all happened just this summer. And she immediately sent a link to the rest of us and said, y'all really need to watch this. It's awesome. So it was 3 hours and something long, the link she sent us. And
Real Bread, the Staff of Life?
Probably, yes, that was it.
Yep.
But we eventually watched that over time, and she jumped right in and she ordered some of the wheat. And she was already a bread maker because she gave up gluten a long time ago, and you addressed that book that we were all influenced by in some of your talks. But she started having some alopecia and decided, she read in that particular book that giving up gluten would cure that.
Stop there just a minute, Marsha. Alopecia, explain what that is. That's where you're losing your hair?
Right. She would just have, and it wasn't consistent, just occasionally, she would have a spot of hair in her head, primarily up under, around her nape of her neck. Just big round circles would fall out of her hair, of her head, of her scalp.
That has to be concerning. My goodness.
It was, but she's never been tested for celiac or any of that, but I was. During the course of I was tested for everything. Thyroid issues, nothing ever showed up. So she never tested for that.
Right.
Just decided, it's some kind of little autoimmune thing going on. So she decided to give up gluten. And in a couple of years ago, she really they had visited family out in California, and she fell in love with the real sourdough bread and found she could eat that without any kind of issues. So she started making her own sourdough bread and got really good at it. And so when she found your things online, she ordered a bucket of the wheat, a couple of types, and she was continuing I think she got the meal and later got the oven, but she began making it all. The second daughter lives in Tennessee, and she was nearer you, so she decided to take a class. She went over and took one of the beginning classes. And
really?
Yes, she did. And I think that was in early August, and she came home with a bread oven and the meal and wheat and everything. And she just said, Mama, you're going to want to try this. And during that time, we had a loss in the family, and she came home and stayed. She brought a bucket of wheat and a loaf of bread she had made. And on August the 28th or 29th, I sat down and ordered your cookbooks and an oven and a meal. And she had brought me some of her wheat until I could read more and decide what I needed to do, what I needed to get. And it was just wonderful. So it made me feel good. So that is how we stumbled across you, and we've all been busy with it since. But the interesting thing to me is I decided in August that I would sign up for your basics class, and I was planning to drive over myself on September the 23rd. So September the 22nd, my husband came in, I get up about 5 o'clock every morning and come out and read. And he came out and he said, Marsha, do you realize that when you're traveling home from Georgia on Saturday, that you're going to be passing through Tuscaloosa when Ole Miss and Alabama are getting out of that ball game? And he said, I really wish you just wouldn't go. I don't want you tangled up in that traffic. And I said, okay, I won't. So I called y'all that day, and I told one of the girls that answered the phone that I could not come because of that traffic problem he didn't want me to go through. And I wanted to release my seat in case somebody was waiting for one. And they graciously refunded me. And I plotted and planned that I would get up on the next Wednesday morning and drive over there, even though there wasn't a class. I just wanted to come. And Saturday morning on the 23rd, the day I was supposed to travel, I had my episode. So this is what happened to me that Saturday morning at 5 a.m. Now, I have not had in my colon since I had the surgery. I have continued to have tenderness at different spots. Like I could press on it and it would just be sore. Yeah. And they put me on, told me I would probably have to stay on stool softeners the rest of my life. And that, I didn't have a hardness, softness issue. I had a moving issue. It just never moved. And so since the surgery, I walked on my treadmill. I started 30 minutes and I built up to where I just worked an hour, 6 days a week, because the Lord only gave us 1 day off a week. So I walked like that, and it helped. And I think that's what's kept me afloat, was that I was walking. But when that Saturday morning at 5, I woke up, and I've been eating the bread now. I've been eating it faithfully since the end of August.
So and that would be almost a month. You had been.
Yeah, that was almost a month, and I had eaten it daily, some type of bread. Laura left me a bucket of hers that she brought home for me to replace later.
Yeah.
So I was using hard red. That's all I had. When that happened to me, I woke up that morning and I said something is wrong. And I got up and it felt like my entire gut was on fire. I've never felt it like that. It was so much more intense than just the beginnings of a regular diverticulitis episode. Yeah. So my husband's a family practice doctor, and when he got up, I said, something's wrong. I've either got diverticulitis or I've got a bladder or a kidney infection. Something is wrong. And he said, well, let's start with the kidney and bladder. That would be easy to check. It was negative. So he said, well, I guess maybe the tenderness there. We're looking at diverticulitis. And he started me on antibiotic that I've never had an issue taking. So Sunday morning, I woke up and my ankles are swollen, and I've never had a swelling issue, never had any kind of thing like that. And I had a rash all over my feet, both feet. And he said, well, maybe we need to change the antibiotic. You may have developed an allergy to it. So he switched my antibiotic. Monday morning, when I woke up very early through the night. That's the 25th, I guess, because the 23rd and the 24th was Sunday, and I felt terrible all day Sunday and went to bed. And through the night, I woke up with the most intense stabbing pain in my right hand at the area of the middle finger knuckle joint right there. Not a knuckle, it was down in the joint. And it was so intense, it woke me up. And when I got up, I noticed my hand was swollen all around that joint. And, the rash had moved up on my legs and was creeping towards my knees. And it was a weird rash. It didn't itch. Every once in a while, I'd have a little sharp tinge in one area, and I'd reach down and I'd rub it, but it was not like an itch. And it wasn't pustules or any kind of anything. It was just a rash. So I just kind of sit around moping, feeling sorry for myself. Poor me. I've got diverticulitis again or something major. And on Monday morning, I went through the day and it started progressing. The rash creeped up on my abdomen. And Tuesday morning, when it was worse, Tuesday morning through the night, Monday night, I was awakened by a contracting muscle in my chest, and it was just on one side, but there was absolutely no pain associated with it, but it was intense enough that it woke me up, and I thought, what is going on? All weird stuff. So Tuesday morning, my husband said, you're coming to the clinic at 1:00, and we're going to do some blood work. So So I did. I went to the clinic. They did everything under the sun. We live out in the woods, so I thought, well, maybe I've got West Nile. I don't know, because we'd been out in the woods checking some areas on Thursday. And I remember telling him, the mosquitoes are eating me up. We've got to go. But all of that, my lab work was normal. The only thing that showed up was inflammation, and I already had evidence of that, so I was not surprised at that finding. But everything was normal. I had no sign of infection. My white count was normal, everything. My test came back over the time. He did check me. Of course, they did a COVID test. That was negative. Checked me for West Nile. They checked me for Rocky Mountain spotted fever, because believe it or not, we've had some cases of that in our area over the last couple of years. All of that came back negative. I had absolutely nothing except to watch this rash progress all over my body when it did. It ended up in my scalp. I didn't have but a couple of places on my face, but it just zoomed all the way up to my scalp. And as it did, it would get better on the lower areas. Very strange. So a couple of the nurse practitioners, when I was in the clinic on that Tuesday afternoon, and all my lab work had started coming in and nothing was showing up, a couple of them thought, well, maybe you've got the beginnings of hand, foot, and mouth. She said, I had it one time, and it's really painful. And that's another thing. The bottom of my feet were very sore and tender, like that knuckle, like that joint in my hand. Wow. And they thought, well, that's what that is. And my husband said, no, that's not what that is. And so they couldn't agree on that. And so I didn't go to church Wednesday to Bible study because I didn't know if I had something contagious, and I just didn't want to expose anybody, and I looked a mess anyway. And so I stayed home. And that night when I was in the bed and I was just praying, I said, Lord, please show me what's wrong with me so that I can fix it or try to fix it if it's fixable. And after I finished praying, I was not sleepy because I'd had so much sleep over the last few days, and I just decided I'd turn on my computer, and I was going to watch another episode of you. So on my YouTube feed came up the episode number 83, Detoxing with Real Bread. And I watched it. And I immediately sent the link to my daughters and my husband, and I said, I think this may be what's wrong with me. I don't know. But I had so many similarities to that lady's experience, what she had gone through with a rash and pain. It was really eye-opening for me. And that's where I think I wound up. Nothing else showed up anywhere. The rash disappeared over the course of maybe 7 days. It was all gone. And I don't have any tenderness now in my colon. Nowhere in my colon. I can press it, and I don't even know I have a colon, which is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
For what I've been through. So I just think that it's kind of absolutely God's blessing because, and I don't know why I'm shocked by it. He's so faithful.
He is.
Supply all our needs if you just ask him. So, but it's hard when you've never felt well in your life and you don't know that. You can't know it until you do feel well.
Yes.
But I began to feel well. So the noticeable changes that my daughter and I started comparing. And the first thing I noticed, and this, paying attention to some of your topics that you discussed, I noticed my fingernails and toenails developed a real natural sheen to them. And I had forgotten until I heard one of your talks about the warts. And I had always had a wart on my left index finger, and I look down and there's no wart on my left index finger.
I love it. And there's always a wart story somewhere.
There is, thankfully. And I typically, when I would get an insect bite, a mosquito bite, they just love me for some reason. And I would have a red spot on my leg that just never would completely go away. I just kind of looked polka dotted in a lot of ways, and they would just linger, and then I'd get a new one, and it'd look worse, and I'd quit paying attention to the old one. But I looked down, and all those spots were gone. And the other thing I always had dark circles under my eyes, and they're definitely improving. They're not gone, but they're definitely improving. But the biggest thing is my gut feels rested. I can't tell you. And during that detox time, I promised my daughters I wouldn't describe, what I went through in that area. And I'm not going to. I'm not going to let them down. But it was phenomenal. It was so different and almost bizarre. But I'll tell you sometime, Sue, but I can't tell it online.
And I do want to ask, so were your bowels moving normally through all of that time, or more than normal, or was it diarrhea, or what?
Are you talking about through what time? Through the detox time?
Yes, yes.
No, they didn't really move at all because I was not eating much, except I made myself eat a piece of bread. I thought, I'm sticking through with this. I'm just going to stick through. And when it did happen, it was so bizarre. I mean, it was just bizarre, and that's all I'm going to say.
All right, you're going to have our listeners going, what?
I know, I'm sorry.
All right, no, that's
sorry.
Okay, but you had a major shift is what
I did. I really did.
That happened, then the rash and the pain and all of that started resolving?
Exactly.
Wow.
So weird. But, sometimes now I think I'm totally normal in that aspect because I've heard you say you should have more than one a day.
Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of normal now. So I don't know. But we'll see. I can't say definitively. All I can say is that's the only thing that it could be from my unscientific. I'm not science. I'm not that way. I'm languages and legal. I don't know.
Yes, but you have a lot of science and medical minded people surrounding you.
Indeed.
Every test possible. I just can't tell you, for me, your story is so timely. And that was, the 26 inches of your colon, losing that certainly caught my attention. But then you mentioned the rash in our brief little conversation yesterday. I can't tell you how many questions I've gotten over the past month of people saying, I've gotten a rash. And I hated to use the word detox symptoms because it seems like such a pat answer today. Oh, you're having trouble with that. It's just detox. But I knew from my early days that a rash can certainly be yeast or other toxins being pushed out of the body from the detoxifying effect of the cleansing of the bowels. But they were just a few isolated cases. But I'm telling you, just about every week I get 2 or 3 emails saying, I just started eating the bread and I'm getting a rash. And, you're kind of hesitant to say it could be detox if it's really something else, especially, and of course, the first jumping off place with so much anti-grain and sensitivity info out there. That's the first thing people think. But wow, your story is amazing.
Yeah, well, leave it to me. I did feel a little mild nausea that week, but certainly nothing that would say, okay, you're fixing to have a stomach virus. It never reached that level.
Yeah.
And I'd have headaches, and my daughters have had similar things. One had a lot of issues in her hip, but her issues with asthma, she had a lot of joint problems. Like I had a lot of tendon surgery in her knees and just a lot of issues there where the other one didn't have that kind of thing growing up, but she had, just couldn't eat. She couldn't hurt her stomach. So we have, maybe this is going to fix all of us. We really hope that. But to add back to what your introduction about the podcast, I just have to tell you, when you answered that phone, I was just calling to follow up on something I'd ordered and I hadn't received it, and turned out it was in my husband's car while I was gone all week last week, and he forgot to tell me. But when you answered the phone and you said, Breadbeckers, this is Sue, and it didn't sound like you on the podcast, and I could tell you were hesitant. And I thought, well, this is a Sue, not the Sue. But when you talked more, when you started asking me questions, I said, I believe this is the Sue. And that's when I decided to tell you what a wonderful thing this had been for me and how much I wanted to thank you. And I never thought I'd really get that opportunity. So all I can determine is that the Lord wanted you to know my story. And if it's going to help even one person avoid a surgery like I went through, it's so worth it. And that would be God's grace to that person. So,
absolutely. So today you're feeling great?
I feel great. And we'll just see where it goes. I'm going to stick with it. One of my daughters had gone to Italy several years ago, and they took a pasta making class while they were there. And so I'm fixing to get my Canute and try. She sent me a link to get a pasta maker like they used when they were there, because I'm going to have to save up for your big mixer attachments. But I'm going to try that. We're going to make pasta.
Oh, my
And I got my bread, my cloche, my baguette cloche, and we're going to make different kinds of bread. I've made muffins already and a pizza crust, so we're in business.
I just love it. Your story, I know, is going to be an encouragement to so many. Like I said, with all the negative grain information out there, that's the jumping off place. People would have immediately jumped on, oh, this has to be the bread because that's what I changed. And they persevered through. But I'm just so thankful that I picked up that phone yesterday. But I just wondered if you have any final words of encouragement you would like to leave our listeners with today. I mean, your story is encouraging enough, but is there any just final thing you would like to say or to share or to encourage others?
Well, I would, because if you have that relationship with the Lord where you can ask Him to direct your path, which is what I wound up doing. I don't know why He kept it obscured from me all these years, but at the right time, in His grace, He provided that answer. So if you have that relationship, just ask Him. He'll send you to Sue. Just ask Him.
I love that. But, it's true. I can't tell you how many times people say, I was praying for an answer and I came across your information. And I'm just so blessed that the Lord is using me this way. I don't know how to explain it, but
it seems so rote just to say thank you, Sue. But
no.
There's so much more to it. But I do appreciate your perseverance and your willingness to get out there and tell us all, because it can make a big difference to us all.
Yes.
And I hope at some point the FDA has to put warning labels on bread.
Yes, that would be amazing.
It would. We can call it the Becker Law. You walk in all these convenience stores and they're requiring them to tell you different stuff about tobacco now. So I don't know why they won't get on bread, because that's a culprit.
Yes. So I just want to thank you, Marsha, for just taking the time on such short notice yesterday. Who knew a 5-minute conversation would lead to an interview on Sue's Healthy Minutes?
Exactly.
Marsha and I both agreed that this was a God moment, a divine appointment to hear our story. I hope you were as encouraged as I am by Marsha's It's the Bread story.
Well, it wasn't fun going through it, but it is fun now looking back on it.
Yes.
Bless you all. Thank you so much.
Yes. As always, thank you everyone for listening today. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.